The sun rose mercilessly over Junction, painting the parched landscape of North Texas with golden hues. Claire Thomas woke before the first ray came through the window of her simple room, as she had done every day for months. At 22, she carried a weight on her shoulders that seemed disproportionate to her delicate age, but her brown eyes revealed a determination that impressed anyone who knew her. "Claire, honey, you're up already?" The raspy voice of Grandma Betty echoed through the narrow hallway of the adobe house. The 78-year-old woman moved slowly, leaning on the wooden cane she had carved herself decades ago. "Yes, Grandma. I'm checking the garden before the heat gets worse," replied Claire, tying her brown hair in a messy braid. She put on a faded cotton shirt and jeans patched at the knees, the daily uniform of someone who works the land without rest. The Thomas property stretched across 12 acres of arid land, where corn, beans, and potatoes once grew in abundance. Now only a few resistant plants insisted on living, fighting against the drought that had extended for more than 8 months. Claire walked among the withered beds, sparingly watering the precious liquid that remained in the well. "Not going to last much longer," she muttered to herself, looking at the yellowed leaves of the okra plant. The reservoir was low, and the weather forecast didn't promise rain any time soon. Grandma Betty appeared on the porch, holding 2 cups of reheated coffee. "Come here, girl. We need to talk." Claire knew that tone didn't announce anything good. She sat beside her grandmother on the wooden bench that her grandfather had built when she was still a child. The coffee was weak but hot, and provided a moment of comfort before the inevitable conversation. "Another man showed up yesterday, asking if we want to sell," said Betty, fixing her gaze on the horizon. "This time he offered more money. Much more." Claire felt her stomach tighten. "And what did you tell him?" "That I needed to talk to you first." The old woman sighed deeply. "Claire, your father's been gone 6 months now. May God rest his soul. But the reality is that we can't maintain this place alone anymore." "Yes, we can, Grandma. It's just a rough patch when the rain comes back." "And when will that be? Next year? 2 years from now?" Betty shook her head, showing the concern she was trying to hide. "The pharmacy bills are late. The medicine money is weighing on the budget, and you're killing yourself working for nothing." Claire stood up abruptly, spilling the rest of her coffee on the dry ground. "For nothing? Grandma, this land is our history. It's where Great-Grandpa planted the first mango tree, where Dad learned to walk, where I was born. How can you say it's for nothing?" "Because history doesn't pay bills, girl." Betty's voice rose but quickly softened. "Look around. The Parkers sold to the mining folks. The Smiths, too. Old John's ranch is now a hole in the ground. At least, they got good money and started over in town." "And are they happy?" Claire crossed her arms, defiant. "Mrs. Mary cries every time I see her at the market, saying she misses the countryside. Little Johnny is unemployed in Mount Clear, living off his brother-in-law's charity." Betty was silent for a few moments, watching the chickens clucking in the yard. "Sometimes we don't have a choice, Claire. Sometimes we have to know when to stop." "No!" Claire sat down again beside her grandmother, taking her wrinkled hands in hers. "Grandma, I promised Dad I'd take care of everything. I promised I wouldn't let anyone take our land. And I'm going to keep that promise." Betty's eyes filled with tears. "You're just like him, stubborn as a mule." A sad smile appeared on her face. "All right, honey, a little more time. But if things don't improve by the end of the year, we'll have to think about other options." Claire nodded, knowing she had won a battle, but the war was far from over. She stood up and kissed her grandmother's forehead. "I'm going to town today. I need to see if we can get some supplies on credit at Mr. Mark's store, and maybe find some extra work." "Take your hat. The sun is killing," Betty recommended, going back inside the house. Claire prepared for another day of struggle. She didn't know yet that on that morning, at a simple town market, an unexpected encounter would completely change the course of her story. Claire's old bicycle creaked along the dirt road to town, raising a cloud of dust that stuck to her hair and clothes. The heat was already intense even though it was still morning, and she had to stop several times in the shade of the few trees that resisted the drought. Junction was bustling that Saturday market day, Merchants shouted their prices. Children ran between the stalls, and the smell of candy mixed with the aroma of strong coffee emanating from the bars. Claire first headed to Mr. Mark's store, a plump, good-natured man who had known her family for generations. "How's it going, Claire? How are things at the ranch?" asked Mark, wiping his hands on his stained apron. "Slow, Mr. Mark. I came to see if you could give me some supplies on credit. I promise to settle everything as soon as I can sell something." The man scratched his belly thoughtfully. "You know how it is, girl. Times are tough for everyone. I already have a lot of people owing me." He paused, observing Claire's worried expression. "But since it's you, I'll make an exception. Your father was always a man of his word." "Thank you, Mr. Mark. You won't regret it." While she was gathering rice, beans, sugar, and some medicine for Grandma Betty, Claire overheard a conversation at the next table. Two men were discussing temporary work at a nearby farm. "Excuse me," she politely interrupted. "Were you talking about work?" One of the men with a graying moustache looked her up and down. "It's heavy work, girl, not for a delicate young lady." "I'm not delicate at all," Claire replied firmly. "I've been working the fields since I could walk. What needs to be done?" "It's at Mr. Anthony's farm over in Bluefield. He needs someone to help organize the property documents, do some office work. Pays well, but it's only for a few weeks." Claire wrote down the information on a crumpled piece of paper. Any extra money would be a blessing at this point. After loading the purchases on her bicycle, she decided to take a walk around the market before heading home. That's when she saw the small crowd gathered at the back of the municipal market. Curious, she approached to see what was happening. "This horse ain't worth a damn," shouted a tall, thin man with a dirty cap and an irritated expression. "Found him lost in the woods, brought him here thinking I'd make some money, but the beast is from the devil." Claire made her way through the people and saw the animal. It was a medium-sized horse with a brown coat stained with dry mud, protruding ribs showing malnutrition. But it was the eyes that impressed her. Black, deep, conveying a mixture of distrust and wounded dignity that she immediately recognized. "How much do you want for him, Mr. Norman?" asked a voice in the crowd. $200, and that's cheap just to get rid of the problem. The beast won't let anyone get close, won't accept a saddle, won't obey any command." "For 200, I'd rather buy a new bicycle," laughed another man. Claire observed the horse more carefully. Despite its mistreated appearance, there was something about it that aroused her compassion. The animal kept its head held high, as if refusing to show complete defeat. Its eyes met hers for a moment, and Claire felt a strange tightness in her chest. $100, she said, surprising herself. Norman turned to her, astonished. 100. "Girl, I said 200. You just said he's not worth anything." $100 for a horse that doesn't obey is even too generous. The crowd began to murmur. Some thought Claire was crazy, others were rooting for her to haggle. Norman looked around, realizing there were no other serious interested parties. 150 and not a penny less. Claire opened the small fabric wallet she kept in her pocket. She counted the crumpled bills twice. She had exactly $130, all the money she had saved from selling eggs and vegetables over the last few months. 130. "That's all I have." Norman sighed impatiently. Fine, but don't come complaining later, and the old saddle goes with him because I don't want to see even the shadow of this animal again." Claire's hands trembled slightly as she handed over the money. She wasn't sure what had led her to make that impulsive decision, but something inside told her she was doing the right thing. "How am I going to take him?" she asked, looking at her loaded bicycle. "That's your problem now," grumbled Norman, placing an improvised rope around the horse's neck. "He should follow if you pull slowly, but be careful. The beast has a temper." Claire took the rope carefully. The horse watched her with suspicion, but offered no resistance when she began to walk. The journey back would be long and challenging, but she had made a decision that, without knowing it, would change not only her life, but the fate of many other people. The sun was already high when Claire arrived at the ranch, sweaty and exhausted. The horse had followed in silence the entire way, keeping a respectful distance, but its eyes never stopped observing her every move. Grandma Betty was on the porch peeling potatoes for lunch when she saw her granddaughter approach with the animal. "Girl, what's this all about?" Her grandmother's voice went up an octave. "Where did you get that?" "Horse?" Claire tied the rope to a nearby tree and helped her grandmother stand up. "Grandma, I can explain." "Explain?" "Claire Thomas, tell me you didn't spend money buying that animal." Betty leaned on her cane, indignant. "We barely have money. For food, and you go and buy a horse?" "It was only $130, Grandma. And just look at him, he was being mistreated, skinny, abandoned." Claire approached the animal, which backed up a few steps. "I couldn't leave him in that situation." $130, Grandma Betty shook her head, desolate. "That money would have bought groceries for a month, and now we have to feed this animal too." Claire knew her grandmother was right, but something inside insisted she had made the correct decision. "He can help us with work on the ranch. When he gets better, he can carry loads, take me to town. If he gets better," grumbled Betty, observing the animal's protruding ribs. "That horse looks like he hasn't eaten in weeks." The rest of the day was tense. Claire improvised a shelter at the back of the property, using old zinc sheets and repurposed wood. She offered hay and water to the horse, but he refused everything, remaining alert and suspicious. Only when Claire moved away did he approach the water trough, drinking in small sips. "At least he's not dehydrated," she murmured, watching from a distance. While the animal rested, Claire decided to examine the old saddle that came with the purchase. It was a piece of worn leather, with rusty buckles and stirrups worn by time. As she cleaned it with a damp cloth, she noticed that one of the side parts seemed slightly unstuck. Curious, she ran her fingers over the area and felt something unusual. Carefully, she managed to open a small hidden compartment that had been skillfully disguised in the leather. Inside, she found a white cotton handkerchief, yellowed by time with delicate embroidery on the edges. In the lower right corner, the initials R.A. were embroidered in blue thread. "How strange," whispered Claire, unfolding the fabric carefully. Wrapped in the handkerchief was a small piece of paper, folded several times. The ink was smudged by moisture, and many words were illegible, but some could still be deciphered. "Trust, return, when it's safe," and what appeared to be, "Meet me." Claire ran to the house, her heart racing. "Grandma, come see this." Grandma Betty put down the embroidery she was working on and followed her granddaughter to the kitchen table. Claire showed her the handkerchief and the note, explaining how she had found them. "R.A.," repeated her grandmother, furrowing her brow. "Those initials tell me something." She remained silent for a few minutes, rummaging through the drawers of her memory. "Claire, do you remember that story that was in the papers a few months ago, about a young man from a wealthy family who disappeared during a storm?" "I don't really remember, Grandma. What story?" "He was a young man from Bluefield, from the Adams family. Rich, handsome, heir to ranches." Betty shook her head, trying to recall the details. "His name was Ryan Adams. The initials match." Claire felt a shiver run down her spine. "Do you think this handkerchief belongs to him?" "Could be, and if it does, that explains a lot." The old woman took the stained paper, bringing it closer to the lamp to see better. "They said he disappeared while riding during a terrible storm. The body was never found, nor was the horse." "So this horse could be his horse, yes. And if the family is looking—" A hard knock on the door interrupted the conversation. The two women looked at each other, surprised. They weren't expecting visitors. "Who could it be at this hour?" murmured Betty. Claire quickly put the handkerchief and the note in her pocket and went to answer. Outside, a man in a dark suit was waiting despite the heat. He was about 40, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good afternoon. Are you Claire Thomas?" "I am. How can I help you?" "My name is Samuel Costa, attorney. I'm here about a horse you bought today at the market." His small eyes scanned the property until they found the animal in the back. "I need to talk to you about this." Claire felt her stomach contract. The discoveries of that day were not a coincidence, and now her peaceful life was about to become much more complicated. "Please come in. Let's talk." Samuel Costa sat on the straw chair in the simple living room, his small eyes examining every detail of the humble house. Claire served him a glass of fresh water, while Grandma Betty remained standing, leaning on her cane, watching the visitor with suspicion. "As I said, I'm here because of the horse," began Samuel, removing a leather folder from his briefcase. "I represent the Adams family from Bluefield. This animal was stolen from our property a few months ago, and now we know where it is." Claire crossed her arms. "Stolen. I bought this horse from Mr. Norman at the market. I have witnesses." "Norman Smith is known for dubious business," replied the lawyer, leafing through some papers. "The fact is that this horse legally belongs to the Adams family. Here are the documents that prove ownership." Betty approached, stretching her neck to see the papers. "And why did it take so long to look for the animal, if it was so important?" Samuel smiled coldly. "The family went through a difficult time, Ma'am. They lost their son in tragic circumstances and needed time to reorganize their business." He turned to Claire. "But now they're ready to reclaim what's theirs." "How much did you pay for the horse?" he asked, opening his wallet. "That's beside the point," Claire replied firmly. "I bought it in good faith. I have witnesses, and now the horse is under my care." Samuel's smile disappeared. "Miss Claire, I advise you not to complicate things. The Adams family has resources and influence. They can make your life very difficult if you choose this path." The threatening tone made Grandma Betty move closer to her granddaughter. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm offering a friendly solution," said Samuel, putting away the papers. $300 for the animal, more than you paid. It's a generous offer." Claire stood up abruptly. "The horse is not for sale." "Then we'll have to resolve this in court," retorted the lawyer, also standing up. "And I guarantee you don't have the resources for a legal battle against the Adams family." After Samuel left, Claire and Betty remained silent for several minutes. The heavy atmosphere of the threat hung in the air like the dust raised by the dry wind. "Claire, maybe it's better to accept the money," suggested her grandmother, worried. $300 would help us a lot, and we wouldn't need to get into trouble with powerful people." "No, Grandma. Something's wrong with this story." Claire removed the handkerchief from her pocket, looking at the embroidered initials. "Why would a lawyer show up on the exact day we bought the horse? How did they know so quickly where it was?" That afternoon, while Betty napped in the hammock, Claire decided to observe the animal's behavior more closely. She had noticed that he always looked in the same direction, as if expecting something or someone. She approached slowly, speaking in a low voice. "Hi, boy, what's your name?" The horse pricked up its ears but didn't move away. "I need to find a name for you. How about Thunder? You look strong like thunder." To her surprise, the horse whinnied softly when she said the name, as if approving the choice. Claire began to offer small handfuls of hay, keeping her distance. Gradually, Thunder approached, accepting the food. That's when she noticed a small scar behind his right ear, almost imperceptible among the hair. "Someone hurt you, didn't they?" she whispered, and the horse lowered his head, as if understanding. Over Seoul, the next few days, Claire established a routine with Thunder. In the morning, she brought water and fresh hay. In the afternoon, she sat near the improvised shelter, talking to him while sewing or peeling vegetables. The horse began to show trust, approaching when she arrived. It was on one of those afternoons that Claire noticed something peculiar. Thunder always walked to the fence that marked the property boundary and looked fixedly to the east, whinnying softly. Then he would return, but he repeated this behavior several times a day. "What do you see there, boy?" asked Claire, following the animal's gaze. Beyond the fence was only the vacant lot that separated the ranch from the abandoned neighboring farm. But Thunder insisted on looking in that direction, as if waiting for something or someone. One morning, Claire decided to let him loose to see what would happen. Thunder walked directly to the fence, but this time he didn't stop. He followed along the side of the property, always in the same direction. Claire followed him at a distance, curious. The horse stopped near the dry creek that marked the boundary with the abandoned farm. He sniffed the air, whinnied softly, and looked at Claire as if inviting her to follow him. "You want to show me something, don't you?" Claire looked around, checking that no one was watching. "All right, I'll trust you." Thunder began to walk along the trail that ran alongside the creek, occasionally stopping to make sure Claire was following. The vegetation there was denser, protected by the moisture that still remained in the soil. After walking for about 20 minutes, Thunder stopped in front of a rocky formation covered by thick brush. He whinnied louder this time, showing agitation. Claire observed the rocks carefully. There was something different there, something that Thunder recognized and she still couldn't understand. But she was sure she was about to discover another piece of the puzzle that her life had become since she bought that mysterious horse. Claire observed the rocky formation more carefully, trying to understand what had aroused such interest in Thunder. The horse remained agitated, walking in small circles and whinnying softly, as if trying to communicate something urgent. "What is it, boy? What's here?" Claire approached the rocks, noting that the vegetation formed a natural curtain in front of the rock. Thunder positioned himself beside her, gently pushing her shoulder with his muzzle. It was then that she heard it, the soft sound of running water. "Water," she murmured, surprised. With the prolonged drought, any water source in the region had dried up months ago. She pushed aside the branches and foliage, making her way through the dense vegetation. On the other side of the green curtain, a small waterfall sprouted from the rocks, forming a crystalline stream that disappeared among the stones. Claire couldn't believe what she was seeing, a pure water source right there so close to home. "Thunder, you brought me to a treasure," she exclaimed, kneeling to drink the fresh water. The horse also drank, showing familiarity with the place. That's when Claire noticed something peculiar behind the water curtain. A dark opening in the rock wall, almost imperceptible but definitely an entrance to somewhere. A cave. She hesitated, observing the narrow opening. Thunder whinnied encouragingly, as if urging her to investigate. Claire wet the handkerchief in the fresh water and tied it around her neck, determined to explore. The entrance was low, forcing her to stoop, but after a few meters it opened into a wider space. The light coming through the opening partially illuminated the environment. Her eyes gradually adjusted to the dim light, and she was able to make out the shapes around her. The cave was natural, with irregular walls and a low ceiling. But in the center of the space, something definitely didn't belong to that wild environment. An old chest made of dark wood, covered by a thin layer of dust and some roots that had grown over it. Claire approached slowly, her heart racing. "My God," she whispered, kneeling before the object. The chest had metal locks, but they weren't ordinary locks. Instead of keyholes, there was a panel with strange buttons, something Claire had never seen before. She tried to open it by pulling the lid, but couldn't. The mechanism seemed to be locked. She examined the panel more closely. There were 5 circular buttons arranged in sequence, each with a different symbol engraved. A crescent moon, a 6-pointed star, a sun, a tree, and something that looked like an animal footprint. Claire tried pressing the buttons in different sequences, but nothing happened. Frustrated, she sat on the cave's earthen floor, observing the mysterious chest. "What are you for? And who brought you here?" she asked aloud, as if the object could answer. It was then that she heard Thunder whinnying outside. The sound seemed urgent, almost a warning. Claire quickly left the cave and found the horse looking nervously in, the direction of the path they had come from. "What is it? Is someone coming?" She strained her ears and could make out distant voices coming from the ranch. Quickly, Claire returned to the cave, memorized the exact position of the chest, and left. She carefully closed the vegetation curtain that hid the entrance and called Thunder. "Come on, boy, we need to get back before they miss us." The way back seemed longer. Claire's mind was buzzing with questions. Who had hidden that chest there? Why did Thunder know the location? And most importantly, what was inside it that required such an elaborate security mechanism? When they reached the ranch, Claire saw Grandma Betty talking with Dr. Henry Branson on the porch. The retired old lawyer was a long-time friend of the family, but his presence at that moment made her apprehensive. "Claire, where were you, girl?" asked Betty, concerned. "Dr. Henry came to visit us and you had disappeared." "I was taking a walk with Thunder, Grandma. He needs exercise." Claire greeted the lawyer, trying to disguise her agitation. "How are you, Dr. Henry?" "Well, my dear, your grandmother told me about that Addams family lawyer's visit." Henry observed Claire carefully. I came to offer my help. I know the family's methods well, and they're not always ethical. Claire felt immense relief. If anyone could help them understand that whole confusing situation, it would be Dr. Henry. You know the Adams family. I've known them for many years, and I know things about Ryan's disappearance that were never published in the newspapers. Henry looked toward Thunder, who was grazing peacefully. That horse. Where exactly did you find him? Claire told him about the purchase at the market, about Norman and the circumstances. Dr. Henry listened in silence, making mental notes. Claire, I need you to tell me everything about this horse. Every detail could be important. Henry rose from his chair. And anything strange you might have found with him? Claire hesitated for a moment, then decided to trust the old family friend. She took the handkerchief from her pocket and showed the embroidered initials and the smudged note. Dr. Henry examined the objects carefully, and his expression became increasingly grave. My child, you may be in greater danger than you imagine. Dr. Henry Branson carefully put away the handkerchief and note in his leather briefcase, his expression showing the gravity of the situation. Claire and Grandma Betty waited in silence, realizing they were about to discover something much bigger than they had imagined. Please sit down, said Henry, adjusting his glasses. What I'm going to tell you may be hard to believe, but it's the truth. Claire pulled a chair closer, while Betty settled into the hammock, resting her cane beside. So Ryan Adams didn't disappear, Claire. He's hiding. Henry paused, observing the reaction of the two women. For more than a year, he discovered a corruption scheme involving members of his own family, mining companies, and influential politicians in the region. What kind of scheme? Asked Claire, intrigued. Money laundering, contract price inflation, falsified documents for mineral exploration on protected lands. Millions of dollars moved illegally. Henry took a different folder from his briefcase. Ryan was a trained lawyer, worked in the family business, and began to notice irregularities. Grandma Betty shook her head, concerned. And that's why he had to run? Exactly. When they discovered he was investigating, his life was in danger. The family tried to buy him off first, then threaten him. Ryan realized he had no choice but to disappear. Claire stood up, agitated. So he faked his own disappearance? It was the only way to stay alive and gather enough evidence to report. The entire scheme. Henry opened the folder and showed some photocopies of documents. He came to me a few weeks before disappearing, asked for my help as a lawyer and friend. Claire examined the papers, trying to understand the complexity of the situation. And Thunder? Ah, the horse. Henry smiled for the first time since arriving. Ryan raised that animal from a colt. They trained together for years. The horse knows special commands, specific routes, and has absolute loyalty to its owner. That's why he always looks in the same direction, murmured Claire, beginning to understand. Ryan must be hiding somewhere nearby, waiting for the right moment to return with the evidence he needs. Henry put the documents away. The problem is that the family discovered the horse is here. And if the horse is here? They know Ryan might be nearby, completed Claire. Exactly. And that's why they sent that fake lawyer to try to recover the animal. Betty frowned. Fake. Samuel Costa is not a lawyer for the Adams family. I made some calls after you told me about his visit. He's a man hired to do the dirty work. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine. So we're really in danger? You could be. These people don't hesitate to use violent methods when necessary. Henry stood up, showing urgency. We need to act quickly. What do you suggest? Asked Claire. First, you two should leave here for a few days. You can stay at my sister's house in town. Second, I need to find a way to contact Ryan. Claire hesitated. There was something she hadn't told the lawyer, but now she realized it might be fundamental. Dr. Henry, I need to tell you something. This morning, Thunder took me to a place, a hidden cave. The lawyer's eyes lit up. A cave? Where? Claire described in detail the location of the cave, the waterfall, and especially the chest with the strange opening mechanism. My God! Exclaimed Henry. That must be the hiding place Ryan prepared. The chest probably contains all the evidence he gathered. "But how to open that mechanism?" asked Claire. Henry walked to the window, observing Thunder in the pasture. The horse. Ryan must have trained the horse to open the chest. Animals can be taught to execute complex sequences of movements. Is that possible? Completely. Horses are extremely intelligent animals and can learn very sophisticated commands. Henry returned to the women. "Claire, I need you to take me to this cave. If we can open the chest and recover the evidence, we can end this whole scheme and ensure everyone's safety." "When?" asked Claire, determined. "Now. We don't have time to lose. With each passing hour, the danger increases." Grandma Betty rose from the hammock, leaning on her. "Kane, I'm going with you." "Grandma, you'd better stay." "No way. If my granddaughter is getting into this dangerous adventure, I'm going along to look after her." The old woman's voice was firm and didn't allow for argument. Dr. Henry smiled, admiring the elderly woman's courage. "Then let's all go, but we need to be very careful. If someone sees us—" "Nobody will see us," said Claire, confident. "I know all the paths in this region, and Thunder will guide us." As they prepared for the journey that could change their lives forever, none of the three noticed they were being watched from a distance through binoculars. Samuel Coster and two men were hidden among the trees, following every movement at the ranch. "They'll lead us directly to where we want to go," murmured Samuel, a cruel smile on his lips. "Keep following. When they find what they're looking for, we act." The sun was beginning to decline when the small group headed for the cave. Claire led Thunder by the improvised reins, while Dr. Henry walked beside her carrying a flashlight and a small backpack with documents. Grandma Betty, despite her age, kept pace, determined to accompany the others. "This way," indicated Claire, deviating from the main trail. "It's safer to follow along the dry creek bed." Thunder showed increasing agitation as they approached their destination. The horse whinnied softly several times, as if recognizing the path and knowing the importance of that moment. "He's anxious," observed Henry. "He probably feels he's about to reunite with his owner." When they reached the rocky formation, Claire carefully pushed aside the vegetation that hid the entrance to the cave. The sound of running water filled the air, bringing temporary relief from the heat. "Amazing," murmured Henry, observing the small waterfall. Ryan chose his hiding place. "Well?" Grandma Betty wet her handkerchief in the fresh water and cooled her face. "In 60 years living here, I never knew about this source." Claire guided the group to the cave entrance. "The opening is low, but then it gets more spacious." One by one, they entered the cave. Henry's flashlight illuminated the environment, revealing the old chest in the center of the space. "My God," whispered the lawyer, approaching the object. "It's exactly as Ryan described." Claire observed Thunder, who had entered the cave with them. The horse walked directly to the chest, as if knowing exactly what to do. "Look!" exclaimed Claire. "He knows!" Thunder positioned himself in front of the panel with the 5 buttons. Carefully, using his muzzle, he pressed the sequence. First the crescent moon, then the star, the sun, the tree, and finally the animal footprint. A metallic click echoed through the cave, and the chest lid slowly opened. "It worked!" Claire shouted, excited. Dr. Henry illuminated the inside of the chest with the flashlight. Inside, meticulously organized, were dozens of documents, photographs, flash drives, and even some audio recordings. "These are the proofs," said Henry, with admiration. Ryan gathered enough evidence to dismantle the entire scheme. Grandma Betty approached, curious. "So much stuff." Falsified contracts, evidence of irregular payments, photographs of secret meetings. Henry quickly leafed through the documents. "This is worth a fortune, but more importantly, it can put dozens of powerful people in prison." It was then they heard voices outside the cave. "I told you they would lead us directly to the treasure," said a voice that Claire immediately recognized, Samuel Coster. "Come out, now!" The voice of the fake lawyer echoed through the cave. Ray felt her heart race. Henry quickly closed the chest and pushed it behind a rocky projection. "Stay calm," he whispered to the 2 women. "Let me talk to them." They left the cave one by one. Outside, Samuel was waiting with 2 intimidating-looking men. All wore dark clothes and had threatening expressions. Dr. Henry Branson, said Samuel, with a false smile. What a surprise. To find you here. Samuel, or should I say, what's your real name? Replied Henry, keeping calm. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that you found what we've been looking for. Samuel gestured to the two men, who approached. Where are the documents? What documents? Asked Claire, trying to appear innocent. Don't waste my time. We know Ryan Adams hid incriminating evidence somewhere around here. The horse led you directly to it. Dr. Henry stepped forward. Even if we found something, do you think we'd just hand it over? Yes, you will. Or you'll regret it. One of Samuel's men showed a pistol in his waistband. Claire felt Grandma Betty trembling beside her. The situation was rapidly getting out of control. Listen carefully, said Samuel, losing patience. We have very powerful people waiting for these documents to disappear forever. People who don't accept failure. It was then they heard another sound, the noise of hooves approaching rapidly. Everyone turned toward the sound. A rider emerged from among the trees, galloping at full speed. He was a young man about 30 with dark hair and a determined look. When he saw Thunder, the horse whinnied loudly in clear demonstration of joy and recognition. Ryan Adams, exclaimed Dr. Henry, surprised and relieved. The young man quickly dismounted and ran toward Thunder, embracing the animal's neck. My friend, I knew you would lead me to the right people. Samuel and his men were paralyzed for a moment, clearly not expecting Ryan to appear in person. Ryan Adams, said Samuel, regaining his composure. Good that you decided to join the party. Now everyone will hand over those documents to us and nobody gets hurt. Ryan smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Sorry to disappoint you, but it's already too late. What do you mean? Asked Samuel. Suspicious. Dr. Henry made some calls before you came here. The federal police are on their way. Ryan took a cell phone from his pocket, and I recorded your entire conversation here. Threats, coercion, illegal possession of a weapon. The distant sound of sirens began to echo through the valley. Samuel and his men looked at each other, realizing they had fallen into a trap. They tried to run, but it was too late. Several federal agents emerged from among the trees, completely surrounding the area. Is everyone okay? Asked the federal agent, approaching the group. Claire finally managed to breathe a sigh of relief. We are, thank you. As Samuel and his accomplices were being arrested, Ryan approached Claire, extending his hand. I don't know how to thank you for what you did for me and Thunder. You saved much more than you can imagine. 3 weeks after the events in the sea, Cave Life in Junction had completely transformed. The news of Samuel Costa's arrest and the dismantling of the corruption scheme occupied the headlines of regional newspapers for days. Claire woke up that Saturday morning to the unusual sound of rain hitting the zinc roof. Grandma, it's raining! She shouted, running to the porch. Grandma Betty was already there, sitting in the hammock, watching the first drops fall on the thirsty earth. Thank God. The land needed this blessing. Claire stretched out her hands to receive the fresh water, laughing like a child. In the last few days, her life had changed in ways she never imagined possible. Good morning, everyone. Ryan's cheerful voice echoed from the gate. He arrived mounted on Thunder, carrying a backpack and a radiant smile. Ryan, good to see you. Claire ran to greet him. In the last few weeks, they had become great friends, united by the extraordinary experience they had shared. Ryan dismounted and tied Thunder near the water trough, where the horse immediately began to drink the accumulated rainwater. I brought good news, he said, taking some papers from his backpack. The documents we found resulted in the arrest of 12 people, including 3 politicians and 2 influential businessmen in the region. Grandma Betty rose from the hammock, leaning on her cane. And those mining companies? All irregular. Licenses were cancelled. The lands that were illegally exploited will have to be recovered at the expense of the companies themselves. Ryan sat on the straw chair. Justice finally being done. Claire served coffee for everyone, still processing. How her simple life had become part of something so big. And about your family, Ryan? She asked, curious. The young man became serious for a moment. My uncle was arrested too. He was coordinating everything. My parents were devastated, but they understood I had no choice. He took a deep breath. The family ranch is being sold. To pay the indemnities, it's the price of justice. I'm sorry, said Claire, genuinely touched. Don't be. It was the right decision. Ryan smiled again. And that brings me to the proposal I came to make today. Claire and Betty looked at each other, curious. Remember when I mentioned that Thunder is descended from a special lineage of horses? Yes, replied Claire. Well, I discovered there are only 3 more horses of this lineage alive. They're all on different farms and their owners don't even know the genetic value they possess. Ryan opened one of the papers, showing photographs and documents. I want to create a preservation project for this breed. Grandma Betty frowned. And what does that mean exactly? It means a partnership, said Ryan, looking directly at Claire. I want to buy the land next to your ranch, build a proper structure for horse breeding, and invite you to be my partners in the project. Claire almost dropped her coffee cup. Partners? You saved my life, Claire. More than that. You took care of Thunder when he needed it most, even without having the resources to do so. You showed a compassion and courage that are rare. Ryan extended another document. This is a partnership contract. 50% for me, 50% for you two. Claire took the paper with trembling hands. But I don't know anything about horse breeding. You'll learn, and I'll teach you everything I know. Ryan stood up, walking to where Thunder was grazing. Besides, you have something. That can't be taught, instinct. Thunder trusted you from day one. That doesn't happen by accident. Grandma Betty approached her granddaughter, placing her hand on her shoulder. Claire, this could be the opportunity we've been waiting for. But what about the ranch and our crops? We'll make everything work together, said Ryan. The horse breeding project will generate enough income to recover agriculture too. With proper irrigation, this land can be productive again. Claire looked around, seeing her property with new eyes. The rain continued to fall, transforming the dry soil into fertile land. It was as if nature was celebrating the possibilities that were opening up. There's one more thing, said Ryan with a mischievous smile. The government offered a reward for recovering the documents and arresting those involved in the scheme. $50,000. 50,000? Claire's eyes widened. Which will be divided equally among all of us who participated in the operation. Dr. Henry has already received his share. Grandma Betty sat heavily in the nearest chair. Good Lord. Claire walked to Thunder, stroking his wet neck. The horse whinnied softly, as if approving all the changes that were happening. You know something, Thunder? When I bought you at that market, I thought I was doing something crazy. The horse turned his head to her, as if understanding every word. But you weren't just a lost horse. You were the key to a future I never imagined possible. Ryan approached, observing the special connection between Claire and the animal. He chose you, Claire. From the very first moment. Claire turned to Grandma Betty and Ryan, the decision clear in her eyes. I accept the proposal. Let's be partners. The three embraced in the rain that continued to fall, wetting the earth and symbolizing the rebirth of their lives. Thunder whinnied loudly as if celebrating with them. 6 months later, Thunder Ranch was a reality. Claire had learned breeding and management techniques she never imagined mastering. Grandma Betty, at 78, discovered a new purpose, helping care for the young animals. The property had become an example of how determination, courage, and a bit of luck could transform lives. Claire was on the porch of the new house, built next to the old one, watching the foals run in the verdant pasture. Thunder, now the main breeding stallion of the ranch, grazed peacefully near the youngsters. I never thought an impulsive gesture at a market would change everything, she murmured to herself. The best gestures are always the impulsive ones, said Ryan, approaching with 2 glasses of cold lemonade. They're the ones that come from the heart. Claire smiled, accepting the drink. You know what impresses me most about this whole story? What? How sometimes what seems to be the end of everything can be just the beginning of something much greater. Ryan nodded, observing the harmonious movement of the horses in the pasture. Thunder knew that from the beginning. Horses have a special wisdom about destinies. At that moment, under the blue Texas sky, Claire knew she had found not only a new future but also her true place in the world, and it had all started with a mysterious horse at a dusty market, proving that sometimes miracles arrive disguised as problems we need to solve.